In this video, we're going to be talking about one of the hottest topics on the internet. Can you vent a blow-off valve to atmosphere? Like it or not, there are people out there who want to hear their car go whoosh when they shift gears. I'm not here to debate that right now. What I want to talk about is the difference between atmosphere and recirculating blow-off valves and whether or not you can or can't do it. If you jump on any forum online talking about atmosphere venting blow-off valves, or somebody asks the forum a question about it, first thing you're going to find is something like this. Yeah, but why would you want to do that? It makes your car run like crap. It recirculates for a reason. Yeah, stay with recirculating. These are the sorts of answers that people get when they ask these questions, but here we want to talk about the real reasons behind it. The factory blow-off valve or diverter valve recirculates the air back to the turbo intake, so it's a completely closed system. There's an airflow meter on most modern cars which measures the amount of air coming into the engine so the ECU can accurately inject the right amount of fuel for the air going in. Now, let's say you vent that air out to atmosphere. You lift off the throttle, the blow-off valve goes off and you lose a large amount of air to the atmosphere. Now that air has already gone through your airflow meter. The ECU is injecting the amount of fuel for that missing air, but since the air's not in the engine, you're going to get a rich condition when the blow-off valve vents. So that much is true. If you vent your blow-off valve to atmosphere, you will get a rich condition if the car has an airflow meter. Now, is that rich condition a problem? Now let's look at the conditions under which the engine is operating when the blow-off valve actually vents. Now the first thing to note is that the blow-off valve vents when you lift off the throttle. So you're not making boost and the engine is not under a considerable amount of load. Second point, the blow-off valve usually only vents for about 1 second or so. Third point, usually the ECU will cut fuel when you have lifted the accelerator, which is injector cut on deceleration. It basically saves fuel because you don't need fuel going in there if you're coasting down the hill with the throttle completely closed. So if we look at these operating conditions, first of all, the engine is not actually under load. So if the mixture is not exactly spot on, it's not going to cause any damage to the engine from incorrect fuel mixtures. Secondly, the blow-off valve can only affect the fuel mixture when it is actually venting, and that is for a very short amount of time and while the injectors are still injecting. So even if the blow-off valve went on for a long amount of time, the injectors are still going to cut at some point, or you're going to grab the next gear and be on your way. So basically, the blow-off valve can only affect the air-fuel ratio when it blows off, which is for a very short amount of time and the engine is not under load. The next part to consider is how rich does the mixture go? Well, it depends on how much air you vent to atmosphere. It is completely proportional. So if you want that blow-off sound, how do you vent to atmosphere and not cause problems for the car? First thing to note is your factory diverter valve cannot be used to vent to atmosphere. The reason for this is that 99% of factory diverters out there will suck wide open at idle, which means this is just going to be constantly dumping air, which will completely screw up the idle and stall the car. So let's put that one aside and not even consider that as an option. Now, the best way to do it is to use a blow-off valve that has some sort of recirc and atmosphere venting. So a dual port valve we're talking about. This particular valve, this GFB response, it has a venting bias adjustment system, which means you can actually change how much air vents to recirc and how much to atmosphere. The reason this system is important is because the amount of air that you vent to atmosphere directly affects how rich the mixture goes when you shift gears. So if your car is particularly sensitive and things like modifications to the exhaust, removing of the cat, all sorts of things, changing the tune, bigger turbo, all these things can change how sensitive your car is to atmosphere venting. So if you're able to adjust how much air vents to atmosphere, you can control the mixture when you shift gears. So like most heated discussions on the internet, the information you'll find on there, some of it's right, some of it's wrong. So no, you won't blow your car up, you won't bore wash the oil off the bores and wear out the engine, you won't destroy the turbo, but if you get the blow-off valve set up wrong, you can cause things like stalling and backfiring. So the key point is, as long as you get the spring preload set up right and the amount of air that you vent to atmosphere correctly set, you can vent to atmosphere.